Good afternoon to you all. My name is Valérie Lemarquand, and I am Attaché for Science and Higher Education at the French Embassy in Sweden. But today I am here to moderate this webinar organized by the French Institute in Finland, during which Helena Tukiainen will present her work. I would first like to say some words about the context. Indeed, 4 French institutes in the Nordic region have decided to launch in 2020 an award, the French Institute Nordic Award, FINA, to promote the scientific cooperation between France and the following Nordic countries: Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and Finland. 4 laureates, 1 in each country, have been selected for their multidisciplinary approaches to nature and biodiversity conservation, and they were given the opportunity to attend the IUCN Congress, either by traveling to Marseille or online. Before the Congress, the French Institute released a series of 4 podcasts which are available on Franska Podden on the Swedish website, and they also organized a webinar in May, during which the 4 laureates shortly presented their work and discussed. The laureates are Julie Strand from Denmark, Annabelle Mempel from Norway, Justine Ramage from Sweden, and Helena Tukiainen from Finland. Today's event is a contribution of the Institut Français de Finlande to the European Researchers' Night, and we will have the pleasure to listen to Helena and the opportunity to ask her whatever question on her research, on her attending the huge event of the IUCN Congress in Marseille, although she experienced it online, or on her future research projects. Helena is a geographer from the University of Oulu in Finland. Her research focuses on the dynamics of geodiversity and biodiversity, and especially on their mutual relationships. In the current iGeoBio project, which she works in as a postdoctoral researcher, she is exploring new empirical evidence for this relationship on different spatial and temporal scales. She is now going to present us her key motivation to study this topic and share with us the perspectives she got from the IUCN Congress. This event is recorded and streamed on Facebook Live, and you will also find it on YouTube on the IF Finland channel on Monday. Please feel also free to ask your questions through Facebook. We will relay them to the public, and Helena will answer them after her presentation. And now, Helena, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Valerie. So it is wonderful to be here tonight with all of you. And I'm grateful for the French Institute and the FINA Award for being able to follow the IUCN World Conservation Congress and for offering me this opportunity to present my key findings from there. So as Valerie kindly introduced me, I am a physical geographer from the University of Oulu. And I'm working with subjects related to the diversity of nature, so both biotic and abiotic. And that is why today I will introduce you my findings from how the abiotic diversity of the nature was recognized in the IUCN Congress, which is maybe the most important conference this year when regarding to nature conservation. This presentation will include 3 parts. In the first part, I will introduce you the geodiversity theme. So the abiotic diversity of the nature or geodiversity might not be familiar for most of you before. And that is why I will first introduce you the concept before heading up to the second part, where I will go through some perspectives from the IUCN Congress. And in part 3, in the end of this presentation, I will just shortly summarize my findings from the Congress and how they are related to my study topics. So firstly, the first part, introduction to the geodiversity theme. Geodiversity is the counterpart for biodiversity. So the biotic diversity of the nature, or the diversity of all the living, whereas geodiversity is the diversity of the abiotic, or the non-living. And maybe this video clip will present you the concept in the most clear way.
Men will be taught that beneath and behind all the outward beauty of our lowlands, our uplands and our highlands, there lies an inner history which, when revealed, will give beauty a fuller significance and an added charm. Archibald Geekie, Landscape and Literature, 1905. Our planet is such a special place, enlivened by an incredible ecological richness of fauna and flora. But the accelerating loss of natural habitat and species mean that biodiversity is on everyone's lips. And yet, underpinning biodiversity is its hidden silent partner, geodiversity. The basis of every ecosystem are the non-living elements of nature, rocks, minerals and soils, and landforms and topography, mountains, gorges, rivers. So as well as underpinning biodiversity, geodiversity underpins human diversity. It's the bedrock of our national and cultural identity. The foundations of Mother Earth, our common home.
So in short, geodiversity is the variety of earth materials, forms and processes. And well, I just wanted to say thank you to the International Geodiversity Day team for making this awesome video presentation. And geodiversity consists of 5 different element types. The first one is hydrology. So water is abiotic. So for instance, rivers and springs, streams, sea areas, lakes, they are all elements of geodiversity. They are hydrological elements. Also, soil is included to geodiversity. So soil types such as sand, silt, gravel, till, and so on, they are included in geodiversity. Then also topographical variation is part of geodiversity. Here are examples of some high topographical variation sites. On the left, there is a view from Colorado in the USA, and on the right is a view from Saanafell in Kilpisjärvi, from the northernmost Finland. Then geomorphological variation, or the different landforms that exist, are also part of geodiversity. And landforms are the features on the Earth's surface that make up the terrain. And in these figures, there is unsorted patterned ground on the left, and there is an embryo dune on top right, and then a moraine hill on bottom right. And then rock types might be the one thing that people most common relate to the word geodiversity. And although it includes also the elements of soils, topography, geomorphology, and hydrology, geodiversity, of course, also contains the variation in rock types. So this is what geodiversity is, but there is a bunch of themes and terminology related to geodiversity research and practice. And here is a figure from my PhD thesis, which was published in 2019 as a summary of those different terms that I might pop up later on this presentation. So I will just really shortly tell to you that what they mean. So on the right, you can see that geodiversity consists of geofeatures or elements of geodiversity, which I presented in the last slides. And then geosites, they are geofeatures which suitable characteristics to be used as a scientific, educational, historical, or cultural resource. And then geotourism is the implementation of touristic activities on geofeatures. And then geodiversity can be measured in a number of ways, which is set on the left. And if you look at the top, you can see that geodiversity is protected by geoconservation. And geoheritage is a set of geological sites in a certain area which have special value and are assessed worthy of conservation. So from these terms, geodiversity and then geoconservation and geoheritage are the ones that I might the most often cite in this presentation. And then when it comes to the relationships between geodiversity and biodiversity, well, they are quite strong. So geodiversity underpins biodiversity, and together they form the diversity of the nature, or at least on the Earth's surface. And together they also support our welfare and produce different kinds of ecosystem services for the humankind. So you can see the name conserving nature states between the geo and biodiversity there. Let's find out what does that mean then. One dimension of geodiversity is to use it in biodiversity conservation purposes and in nature conservation purposes. So geodiversity has value itself, but it has also been put forward as a novel, potentially useful approach or concept to understand and conserve biodiversity. So the living creatures depend on the abiotic states of the environment. And the more diverse the state is, the more biological diversity it enables. So the more there can be different actors. So at least on theoretical level, high geodiversity should support high biodiversity. Despite this intimate link between the abiotic and biotic diversity, conservation approaches have typically neglected geodiversity. And in addition, there is not yet much empirical evidence on the real-world relationships between geo and biodiversity. And for this, a conservation strategy called Conserving Nature States has been put forward as a novel framework which states that geodiversity could be used as a force filter strategy for conserving biodiversity. So instead of targeting individual species or separate habitats for conservation, The target should rather be on areas that can support high biodiversity under the future global change. And these areas could be the ones that have high geodiversity. So how are all these things and theories about geodiversity related to my current work and research? We have an ongoing Academy of Finland funded project, which is called Improve Geodiversity Information in Assessing and Conserving Biodiversity, or more shortly, iGeoBio, at the University of Oulu Geography Research Unit. It is led by Senior Research Fellow Janne Alahuhta, and currently myself and Dr. Tuija Maliniemi, we are working as postdoctoral researchers in this project. And in the project, we seek solutions for well-targeted nature conservation and tools for preventing biodiversity loss. And we are trying to find out whether geodiverse environments actually succeed in preserving biodiversity. And we are doing this by examining how the diversity of abiotic nature or geodiversity relates to biodiversity. And one of my key motivations to study this topic in this project is to find new advantages for nature conservation and especially for halting the biodiversity loss in changing climates. The University of Oulu Geography Research Unit is among the top institutions in the world examining geodiversity-biodiversity relationships. And as you can see from the examples in the slide, we have published a multiplicity of research articles on the topic, and there are more to come. And the geodiversity research has spread out during the last decade. And I am very happy to tell you that geodiversity is a very timely topic in current global research. And this is at several disciplines and perspectives. And for instance, in geoheritage research, conservation research, in geography, in ecology, in biogeography, and so on. And here are some examples of recent geodiversity studies. Although geodiversity research is really emerging at the moment, it is still often neglected from conservation approaches or the practical conservation. But there are also many examples where geodiversity is recognized. For instance, the International Union for Conservation of Nature, so IUCN, has included geodiversity and geoheritage in some of its operations and policies. Geodiversity contributes to many of IUCN's areas of work, such as climate change, ecosystem management, environmental law, protected areas, and World Heritage. And for instance, IUCN is the founding organization of the UNESCO World Heritage Convention, and it is its advisor on nature. And I will go in more details of the World Heritage sites at part 2 of this presentation regarding to the IUCN Congress readings. Also, IUCN has had a long-standing role in supporting the UNESCO Global Geoparks Network, and IUCN is a non-voting member of the UNESCO Global Geoparks Council. In 2013, a Geoheritage Specialist Group was created under IUCN's World Commission on Protected Areas. And since 2015, IUCN's Protected Area Governance and Management Handbook contains a chapter on geoconservation. And last year, a best practice guideline on geoheritage conservation in protected areas was published by IUCN. And let's continue a bit about geodiversity and nature conservation. So the geopark network, I already mentioned it in the previous slide, and a few more words on that. So what are geoparks? Well, UNESCO Global Geoparks are single unified geographical areas where sites and landscapes of international geological significance are managed with a holistic concept of protection, education, and sustainable development. And at present, there are 169 UNESCO Global Geoparks in 44 countries, and the amount expanding at a rapid rate. And as you can see from the map, many of the geoparks are in Europe and also in China. And there are 3 UNESCO global geoparks also in Finland. Saimaa, which was accepted this year, then Lauhanvuori Hämeenkangas in the central Finland, and Rokuo, which is just right beside Oulu. And we have active collaboration with Rokuo Geopark at the University of Oulu Geography Research Unit, our study team. And for instance, our study team and our project collected this summer a very interesting data set from the geopark area, which includes data on vegetation and geodiversity, and it will be processed during the upcoming semester. And to give you a small hint of what it looks like in a geopark, here is a short introduction to landscapes in Rokuo. And about geopark concept, I really think that it's a good concept because it combines the geological and geodiversity aspects to sustainable tourism and social sustainability and sustainable economic development and education. So it's a brilliant concept. And if you have a chance to visit in a geopark, I really recommend going in there. So now that you have had an introduction to the geodiversity team and know what it means and how is it related to biodiversity, how geodiversity is related to nature conservation and human welfare, it is time to talk about the IUCN Congress and how geodiversity was treated there in the beginning of this month. So let's go to the part 2 of my presentation then. So first, something really general about the actual event. So usually the Congress is held every 4 years. The International Union for Conservation of Nature, so IUCN World Conservation Congress, is the world's largest conservation event, and this year it was held in the beginning of September in France and also online. And the event was postponed because of the COVID-19 pandemic from its original date, which was in June 2020. The Congress is jointly organized by the French Ministry of Ecological and Inclusive Transition and the IUCN, and brings together leaders and experts from government, civil society, indigenous peoples organizations, business and academia to determine the world's most pressing environmental and development challenges and actions to address them. And the Congress lasted altogether 8 days. It had thousands of participants and over 160 countries represented. So it was a really huge global event focusing on conservation issues at different perspectives. And there were 3 components at the Congress. So there was a members' assembly, then exhibition and forum. And my participation which was online only this time, unfortunately. It was to the forum, which was held between 4th and 7th of September. And in the forum, over 600 sessions during those days addressed the economic, social, scientific, technical aspects of issues ranging from wildlife to oceans, protected areas to sustainable business, and climate change to human rights. So there was a large setting of themes covered in the forum. And of course, I wasn't able to attend to all of the forum sessions, but during the 4 full days of the forum, I attended to the ones that were the most relevant for my work. As an outcome of the Congress, IUCN published the Marseille Manifesto. And in there, the outcomes of the Congress are summarized, and it is stated that what are the IUCN World Conservation Congress's commitments to action. And here are a few direct highlights from the manifesto. So it says in there that the climate and biodiversity emergencies, they are not distinct, but they are two aspects of the same crisis. Unsustainable human activity continues to compound the situation and threatens not only our own survival, but the foundation of life on Earth. And we cannot separate ourselves from nature. We are part of nature and depend upon it for our lives and livelihoods. And it also says in the manifesto that yet there is reason to be optimistic. We are perfectly capable of making transformative change and doing it swiftly. And it also stated in there that economic so-called success can no longer come at nature's expense. And a theme that was broadly discussed through the Congress was the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, which is under preparation. And it is stated in the framework that if we are to secure the future of life on the planet, we must halt the loss of biodiversity by 2030 and achieve ecosystem recovery and restoration by 2050. And as another numerical indicator and target, which was a lot discussed during the Congress too, was the 30-30 target, where the Congress calls for at least 30% of the planet, so both land and waters, to be protected by 2030. And these two themes were broadly discussed through the conference and cited almost in every session that I listened. Then I collected for you some quotes through the sessions, and these might be my favorite ones. Josefa Tauli from the Global Youth Biodiversity Network said that development is not just about growth, it's about good life. Elisabeth Mrema, the Executive Secretary from the Convention on Biological Diversity, said that we need all hands on deck to ensure the success of the post-2020 framework. It is a small task on what we are in danger to lose. That's well and heavily said. Then Professor Leroy Littlebear from the Kainai First Nation Canada said that we need to be part of the nature, not separate, but part of it. And then Paul Watkinson, the Conseiller from French Minister, said that how can we build on the messages that we get from the scientific community? And related to this quote, it was emphasized already in the forum opening that action should be based on scientific knowledge. And as a researcher, the statement that conservation action should be based on research, it is really important to hear. So among the 600 forum sessions at the Congress and a diversity of topics, how was geodiversity recognized? So for my disappointment, although IUCN has been increasingly recognizing geodiversity and geoheritage aspects in its policies, as I summarized before in the presentation. These teams were in the minority and did not get sufficient attention at the Congress program. So geodiversity or neither related themes such as geoheritage or geoconservation were not a main theme or even a direct side theme of any of the forum sessions. But however, there were a multiplicity of Congress themes, sessions and talks that were related to geodiversity or to the abiotic nature. So there were broad themes that include both abiotic and biotic nature, for example, ecosystems and ecosystem types. For instance, in the IUCN Global Ecosystem Typology, which takes into account both biotic and abiotic characteristics or realms, there were many sessions on those. And then ecosystem services, or the goods and benefits that nature offers us humans, which can be products of both biotic and abiotic nature. Then habitats, which are areas characterized by certain environmental conditions and by the plant and animal species, typical of such areas. And there was also many sessions about World Heritage Sites. Then more specific themes were also discussed in the Congress. For instance, themes related to soils, especially related to agriculture, and then fresh waters and mining. And of these themes, I will go through more specifically now how the Congress talks and sessions deal with World Heritage and mining. And geodiversity is closely related to both of these. So to the first example, I will go through is World Heritage Sites. There were multiple sessions on the topic of World Heritage at the Congress, and it is a timely topic because the Convention on World Heritage is 50 years next year, and the number of World Heritage Sites is rapidly increasing. And I will go through the session called The Outlook for World Heritage at 50, Crisis or Crossroads, in more detail soon, but before that, a short introduction to you on what is World Heritage, so that you will understand the context. World Heritage Sites consider both cultural heritage and natural heritage. Cultural heritage refers to monuments, buildings, sites with historical, aesthetic, archaeological, scientific, ethnological, or anthropological value. Natural heritage refers to outstanding physical, biological, or geological features and include habitats of threatened species, as well as areas with scientific and environmental or aesthetic value. And there can be also mixed sites. And there are altogether 1,154 sites, World Heritage Sites globally right now. And in Finland, there are multiple sites, of which one is a nature site. So the high coast or the Kvarken archipelago together with Sweden. And here is an iconic example of a World Heritage Site with natural heritage, the Grand Canyon National Park in the United States. So how can a site be a World Heritage Site? Can it just name itself? So no, the World Heritage Committee is the main body in charge of the implementation of the World Heritage Convention. And once a year, the committee meets to decide which sites will be inscribed on the World Heritage list. And 3 international organizations are named in the conventions to advise the committee in its decisions, and one of these is IUCN. And state parties are countries which have adhered to the World Heritage Convention, and there are almost 200 state parties nowadays. And to be included on the list, site must be of outstanding universal value and meet at least 1 out of 10 selection criteria. And for instance, the Kvarken archipelago and the high coast in Finland and Sweden were inscribed to the list in year 2000 under the criterion 8, so of exceptional geological value. And recently, the IUCN World Heritage Outlook 3 for Natural World Heritage Sites was published. And there the outlook of each site is estimated and described. And if you are interested in it, you can go online and check the outlook yourself. For instance, if we go to Finland, you can see the Kvarken site, which is not yet estimated. So, as I said before, there were multiple sessions on the topic of World Heritage at the Congress. And I will focus on this one in my speech and will introduce you the main points raised in the discussion in this session. And here are some of the main themes discussed in the session, the interesting and inspiring themes. So firstly, Tim Batman, the director of the IUCN World Heritage Program, highlighted that World Heritage binds nature and culture together. So it is seen as one of the strengths of this heritage approach and was highlighted through the session. Then Mechtil Drössler, the director of World Heritage Center from the UNESCO, pointed out that currently there is an uneven geographical distribution of World Heritage sites globally. Around half of World Heritage sites are currently from Europe and from USA. Christine Grant from the International Indigenous Peoples Forum on World Heritage highlighted, among others, that local communities and indigenous people should be heard in the heritage site process. And the role of indigenous people was actually highlighted through the whole Congress, no matter what the theme was, which is really important. Then Peter Shady, the senior advisor of the World Heritage Program from IUCN, he introduced the World Heritage Outlook 3 that I mentioned already before. And he concluded that the overall conservation outlook is deteriorating, but there are also some success stories. And the third of natural World Heritage sites, they do not have a positive outlook, as you can see from the pie chart. And sites, on the right, you can see that sites under biodiversity criteria, they are more negatively affected than, for example, the sites under geologic criteria. And most of the sites under geologic criteria are actually at good state. And the outlook revealed that climate change is the most important threat for the heritage sites at the moment. This is especially true with the sites under geologic criteria. Also, tourism visitation poses threats to geological heritage sites. Then a bit outside of the session, but for you to know an important detail. So this year, IUCN launched a new report called Geological World Heritage. And the aim of this report is to discuss and advise on the role of the World Heritage Convention in recognizing and protecting geological and geomorphological heritage. I think that this is a really important step and an interesting piece of work also for anyone interested in geodiversity or geoheritage themes, and it can be found online. And this report analyzes the World Heritage list based on 11 geological themes, such as fossil sites, volcanoes, cave systems, mountains, coastal and marine systems, and so on. So if you are interested, go and check it out. Okay, that was for the World Heritage. And then to the second example of how geodiversity was handled in the Congress. So it is mining. How mining is related to geodiversity. So all the non-renewable natural resources, such as minerals, they are products of geodiversity or abiotic nature. For example, we need around 30 different types of metals, such as copper and coal, for the making of a smartphone. Maybe you are watching this event on your smartphones right now. So geodiversity has been useful for you. Mining was mentioned already in the opening of the Congress Forum, and as with World Heritage Site, it was then a subject of many talks and sessions. And the main viewpoint, which was related to mining in the Congress, it was threat. So mining is seen as a threat, for instance, to the environment and to local communities. At the same time, we need the minerals gained with mining and at an increasing rate. So there's a real need for investigating and developing ways for the sustainable use of natural resources and sustainable mining. So mining is growing and there aren't many options to decrease that growth. And without mining and minerals, we won't have green solutions. So we need mining for the low carbon economy. Green solutions, they are dependent on the minerals. So for instance, lithium mining, it is hugely expanding due to the increased demand of lithium-ion batteries used in electric cars, for example. And now I will introduce you in more detail a Congress session which is related to the themes of sustainability and environment, a session called Balancing Development, Conservation and Social Issues Related to Mining. And in that session, many perspectives regarding the sustainability and even problems arising by mining were discussed. And there were several talks and an interesting panel discussion. And I have picked here for you some of the most interesting points raised by the speakers. First, Yolanda Kakabatse, a former IUCN president, stated that the role of discussion between different stakeholders is important. She said that IUCN believes that unless we talk to each other, we don't find good solutions for the impacts of mining for the environment and for the societies. Mining is growing and there aren't many options to decrease that growth. Then Konrad Seivi, who is the biodiversity lead in Africa and Middle East for International Finance Corporation in Kenya, he said that working with mining sector is easy compared, for example, to tourism or agribusiness. And he said that it is the medium to small sized companies that we need to catch up, so have problems mostly. Interesting statements. And he also asked a good question to all of us and all of people in the session. So how can non-governmental organizations like IUCN or BirdLife activate their local members to ask better questions from local mining companies? So the role of cooperation was also mentioned in his speech. And in the session also perspectives from the mining sector and mining companies were heard. Katie Ferguson from the Beers Group highlighted that mining companies should act sustainably. In addition, she highlighted that mining companies and mining sector offers also many possibilities for local communities and local government. My favorite citations from this session come from Melinda Yangi, who is the executive director of Justice Institute in Guyana. She reminded us that mining is not sustainable because the minerals that are mined are non-renewable, but the mining process might be. So let's go towards sustainable mining process. And a great ending note for the handling of mining, as well as abiotic nature and also the nature as a whole at the IUCN Congress. It comes from Melinda. She said that when we talk of conservation, we should not think of it as an expense. It is the only moral relationship that we have with the nature. I think that this is really well said. Nature conservation is something that should be taken into account and in a positive spirit, not that we have to do it and see it as an obligatory cost. Now it is time for a short conclusion section. So this is the shortest part. This is only 3 slides to go. So stay tuned. What did I learn from the IUCN World Conservation Congress in September when reflecting to my research and my research topics? So in my perspective, we need both biodiversity and geodiversity for successful nature conservation strategies and management. And the lack of geodiversity approaches, which take into account the whole concept of geodiversity, or geoheritage or geoconservation, not just individual parts of geodiversity, such as soils or mining. The lack of these approaches in the IUCN Congress reveals the need for incorporating also abiotic nature better to current and upcoming mainstream nature conservation. So there is work to do in that sense. Geodiversity is important itself, but it also has the potential of being utilized for biodiversity conservation, since it is the stage on which biodiversity and the biotic features are built on. I wish that in 4 years, when the next IUCN Congress will be held, geodiversity is raised up as an important part of nature and its conservation. And for this, the current scientific research provides several recent findings, and I believe that there are many more to come in the upcoming years. In the closing plenary of the Congress Forum, Harvey Locke, the chair of the IUCN World Commission on Protected Areas Task Force Beyond the Aichi Targets, he said something very important. He said in his concluding words that let's think of us being part of everything, both living and non-living, such as rocks and rivers. His words conclude what is really important to remember. We are part of the nature, and the nature consists of both living and non-living elements, so biodiversity and geodiversity. This is a very good ending note for the world's leading environmental event. Many thanks for your attention, and I'm happy that I could share my research and my views from the IUCN Congress with you, and I'm more than happy to discuss more and answer any questions that you have in mind. And thank you, and for further communication, you can reach me, for instance, via email or in Twitter. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Helena, for this comprehensive presentation and all these inspiring remarks and information. It's, well, I really appreciate it, and I think that the public also did. And maybe you, well, what you said and the last things are really important, because it was part of my questions. Maybe I should ask the first question before we take the one from the public, because you said that you were rather disappointed to see that geodiversity wasn't recognized this year per se at IUCN, and well, I think that it brings us to the fact that maybe the general public isn't really aware of geodiversity. We've heard lots about biodiversity. That's great, but indeed you have a great job to do to bring it to the attention of the public. And I guess that your research on your projects may be in this area. How do you intend to do it? I guess you have many, well, different scales to do it, because your teacher, your researcher, and well, maybe we can start by discussing that thing.
Thank you. That's a really important point and a good question, and a thing that we have been discussing with our colleagues. And I think that, as you said, there are like several levels on which you can act on this. And the most basic level is speak about it with the people that you know and that you work with and you are dealing with. And then there are these broader levels, which include making the research visible. And I know that many people that work with geodiversity issues and geoheritage issues, and many organizations that work with these issues have been making very good work for geodiversity consciousness to grow, but there is still a lot of work to do.
Yeah, and another question, kind of general, but that comes from the fact that you're a researcher. You have presented these World Heritage Site, but how do you observe, or what have you observed being part of loss of geodiversity in Finland, for example? If you have, can notice something, or if it's too early, just say it also.
We published with Professor Jan Hughes an article in this summer about geodiversity in Finland, and I think it was the first one to actually publish about geodiversity at the scale of our country. And I guess that for individual persons, it is really hard to see the geodiversity as a whole in the nature, but you can see the different geodiversity elements. You can, for example, have a cottage by a lake, and there's a hill, and there's a kettle hole, and there's a spring, and those things are the geodiversity. And I think that although the geodiversity term might not be familiar for many of us, the geodiversity is actually present in our everyday lives. And this is a good starting point.
But I must say, and I'm not really proud of it, that I wasn't really aware of geodiversity before I heard about your work and the FINA Award. So I think that from this point of view, this is a beginning, and I can only encourage people hearing this and reading about what you've done and we've done to spread the word and be more aware. And in this, in this regard, what would be your message as a researcher to whatever level of authority, to at the rector of university level, researcher level, or government? What would you like to tell them?
Well, I must say first that it was great how enthusiastically many political leaders at the conference and the other influencers were about nature conservation. So I know that there is a will for act to our nature in many countries and, in each deciding level. But, and as you said, the knowledge about biodiversity is really wide. But it's a harder question that how to bring up knowledge on geodiversity. One really nice way is a thing called International Geodiversity Day. It's on the list of UNESCO general meeting in the end of this year, and if it goes through, and I hope and I know that it will, probably. So then we will have an International Geodiversity Day globally every year. And I think that would be a great opportunity to increase knowledge on geodiversity. And for instance, the video I showed you in the beginning, where it was described that what geodiversity is, it was made by this organizing team of the Geodiversity Day. So they are doing amazing job on that.
Yeah, indeed, the video is really great and amazing, and I guess that I hope that it will be used at in the schools, in the university, and also on the TV channel, because really it's great, and it makes us see that it's really important. I was also kind of well, my attention was attracted, and I see that the public also have such questions about the Marseille Manifesto. It's maybe surprising to see that there are optimistic, there is an optimistic part. And what do you think about it? Is it related with the statistics you showed, showing that indeed, when it comes to geodiversity, it's not so bad as for biodiversity? Could you comment that, and what's your feeling about it?
I think that the Marseille Manifesto, it's quite a general comment on the whole including of the Congress. And then there were many promises and practical promises that what IUCN will do for the biodiversity, to halt the biodiversity loss in the upcoming years. And I think that they can be done. But related to how different threats are, or how biological World Heritage Sites and geological World Heritage Sites, they are threatened by different things. So it is really important to notice that different types of sites need different kinds of protection.
Yeah, I see that the picture or the example you gave met also some attention by the public, because and in fact it's the image of the stage and the actors, and maybe what you say or what is understood is that maybe we have a bit more time, or it's not that bad in geodiversity as in biodiversity, so that if we act now, maybe we can really have a greater impact. What do you think about this, and what could we propose, and to be more efficient, and what can we do?
Yeah, it's always a good question to ask that what can we do? Then we are on the right track if we are thinking of it. In general, geodiversity it is much more stable over time than biodiversity. You know, rocks, soils, everything, the formations, the landforms, they don't change at so fast rate than biodiversity does. And this is why it has been proposed that geodiversity measures, for example, the number of different geodiversity elements on a site, could be used as a proxy for biodiversity and used in protection purposes. But then, of course, also geodiversity can be threatened by human activities and other things, such as climate change, and it should be notified in the sites that we are conserving.
Yeah. And this brings us to another question, which is the mining topic. You explained that there were sessions at IUCN, and we all understand that there is a great impact on nature and on the rocks and soils and all what is inherent to geodiversity. We have the problem of the IT with the informatics and cell phones and electrical motors. And what do you have a comment on the mining activities? Well, generally and more specifically in Finland or in Scandinavia?
Maybe my perspective would be that mining, of course, we need it in modern society. But nowadays, for example, in Finland, maybe the mining takes somehow into account the biodiversity of the area and the impacts on nature and society and so on. But maybe what is not so much taken into account is that how it affects the geodiversity of the mining sites. The fact that a mining company comes and takes this one or two minerals or metals. So there is a need for a holistic environmental evaluations for the areas, even better ones that there are nowadays.
Yeah, and maybe to be more specific, because the question points at some places in Lapland and Saimaa in Finland, and this maybe also be related to the number of heritage sites in the world, Europe and other countries. How can you comment it related with mining? I don't know, it's just...
Yeah, well, I have no specific opinion on the places that were pointed out in the question. So mining in Saimaa or in Lapland, I will just say that hopefully it is done in a sustainable way. And regarding to World Heritage Sites, there were examples in the Congress sessions that there had been built a dam to a river in the middle of a World Heritage Site. And it had not at all been evaluated before it had been built, and it had not been told to the World Heritage Committee that there would be a dam. Well, not a mine, but a dam anyway, in the river in that site. So there was this discussion that what can we build, what can we do to our nature, what can be done inside of a protected area. These are all good questions.
Yeah, and well, to come back to Finland and conservation of geodiversity, you showed an example of one site, but how is it really conserved in Finland? How is geodiversity conserved in Finland?
Oh, this is a good question. And well, as I mentioned in the presentation, we have 3 official UNESCO global geopark sites or areas in Finland, and hopefully many more to come. I know that there are processes going on in several sites. And we have World Heritage Sites in Finland. And in addition, Finnish Protected Area Network aims at preserving geological and geomorphological formations, among other things. And then the environmental administration, they have inventoried and evaluated nationally geological formations, for example, valuable eskers and moraine formations and dune areas and so on. So there are many things that are related to the abiotic nature and geodiversity at Finnish scale.
Okay. And consequently, what are there was the question, what can we do so practically, because in which way could we also use geodiversity, which is the stage, in nature conservation, well, to help the actors getting better in the future, but starting now?
Yeah, hopefully soon. But well, some of the ways for doing that could be, for instance, making really practical ways for making a national level geoheritage inventories. In France, for example, there has been made this really comprehensive geoheritage inventory. But in many other countries, such as Finland, no such thing has been done. And also the elements of geodiversity could be extensively mapped in areas. And for example, when new protected areas are planned, the information on geodiversity, in addition to, for example, species information on the area, it could be considered. So, for example, is it worth of putting the conservation area in an area that is geo-rich rather than in an area that hosts one threatened species, although an important one? So these are kind of questions that I wish that would be considered in the future.
Okay. And well, there is perhaps yet coming back to IUCN, personal question as a scientific, I'm also a bit curious because Congress online, such a big venue, a big event, how was it to attend it, unfortunately, online?
Yeah, I would have really loved to go on site, but unfortunately that was not possible this time. It was a fun coincidence that I actually attended the Congress online but I was in an area that is among the most sensitive areas to climate change. So I was in Kilpisjärvi in northernmost Finland following the Congress. It is a really high latitude area with tundra environments. And it was really inspiring to follow the Congress from there, from the beautiful high geodiverse environment, so to say. And I feel that attending and listening to the sessions, it was easy, as well, almost as easy as it would have been on site. But of course, I miss especially the unofficial discussions before the sessions or after the sessions with people from all over the world. So this kind of unofficial program, that one I missed this time.
Okay, and so you said you finally were lucky to attend it in an inspiring environment, despite the fact that you were not in the south, in Marseille. And what did inspire you? Well, I guess you had several sources of inspiration, indeed. And what did it inspire you? And what was for you the most important lessons you came from this Congress?
Maybe the most inspiring thing at the Congress was the inspiration that all the speakers had for their topics and for nature conservation. And there was this strong ambition towards the protection of our nature and towards halting the biodiversity loss. So as a general point, that was the most inspiring part of the Congress.
Okay, and I guess that all this inspiration you get has given you also ideas or wishes for your current work and maybe future work. How comes it all in this, in the frame? What are you doing now, and what will you do in the future, being inspired by such an event?
Yeah, the Congress gave me inspiration to continue the work that I and we are doing in the project and in our research. So I learned that information on geodiversity is still needed, and in addition to scientific research, it is highly important to spread the word of geodiversity also to general public and to decision makers and so on. And I would like to continue on research investigating the geodiversity biodiversity relationships at many scales, at local scales where the conservation decisions are usually made, but also on broader scales and global scales. And in addition, I would like to bring more social perspectives to my research, for instance, more related to geoheritage themes and so on. So I'm very much looking forward for the upcoming years and what they might bring to me.
Okay, I'm sure you will do a great job, because there is lots to do. So that's also a great motivation, I think.
Yes.
I can see that we've come through all the questions that we had. So maybe what would be your take-home message for the public and the one who attended? What would you like us to remind?
I would like you to remember that nature is an entity that consists of the biotic, so the animals and plants and so on, and also the abiotic, so the rocks, the soils, the water elements, all the landforms, and all of them are important and all of them are needed in nature conservation.
Well, that are great thoughts, and I'm sure everybody will think about it, and I guess that in the future we'll also speak again about geodiversity, and surely try to do some more events on this topic. So, Helena, I thank you very much for these inspiring moments and all the information also you gave us, and some of tasks also to do and to be aware of. So thank you for that. That was great.
Thank you so much.
I just wanted to say to everybody that the Institut Français in each land, in each country, contribute to these topics and to the animation on sustainability goals. And maybe for those who would have the courage, I can propose you tomorrow from the French Institute in Sweden, brainstorming about imported pollution. It will be at 5 o'clock Swedish time, so 6 p.m. Finnish time. So thank you again, Helena, and maybe for all who are attending, see you again tomorrow online. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.